Chapter 1. The soaring pillars of carved emerald stone gleamed under the flickering glow pearls that lined the towering ceilings of the council chambers. Norris strode confidently between the tiers of council members' seats toward the central stone podium, chin held high and shoulders back, exuding self-assurance. His boots echoed crisply on the polished volcanic rock with each step as he felt the eyes of the Federation's representatives boring into him. Reaching the podium, Norris stood tall and steady, hands loose at his sides as he had done when facing down enemies during his early days in Starfleet. The grandeur and gravitas of the chamber was designed to impress upon visitors the importance of the governing council. "Welcome, Captain Norris," intoned the Andorian chief, her snowy hair glinting in the soft glow pearls light. "Please accept my apologies for the abrupt summons, but a grave threat to the Federation requires your skills." The Tellarite counselor snorted, his leathered skin rippling. "Bah! This human was only recently promoted. He will be swallowed whole by what comes." The Vulcan counselor cocked his head calmly. "Incorrect assessment. Captain Norris has succeeded in missions previously deemed hopeless even by our most veteran commanders." The chief nodded, her antennae twitching. Long-range scans have detected a massive draconian armada amassing in the Typhon expanse. By our projections, they will bear down on Sol within one standard month. We ask that you intercept them aboard the starship Avalon before they can invade. Norris met the Andorian's violet gaze steadily, eyes narrowing with solemn resolve. Skirmishes with draconian marauders over border territories was one thing, but facing thousands of warships head-on? The odds were beyond severe. Yet if the Council believed in him to undertake this mission, he would answer the call of duty no matter the risk. "I'll do it," Norris replied firmly, steel in his voice. "By my life, we will halt their advance or die trying." The chief gave a somber nod, the weight of billions of Federation lives depending on the success of this Terran captain and his crew. "Then go swiftly, and may fortune favor you." As Norris strode from the chambers toward his shuttle, an anxious Federation president hurried to see him off, her careworn face furrowed with worry. "Captain, I will not downplay the deadly threat we now face," she said grimly. "But after your exploits defeating the Savan raiders at Helios, I know you are likely the only one who gives us any hope of fighting off this invasion." She placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "All our prayers and wishes go with you, Captain. Go save our worlds." Norris gave a nod of grave acceptance. "I understand fully the stakes before us, Madam President. I swear to you that the Draconians will not reach Sol while my crew and I yet draw breath." The President managed a small, hopeful smile in return. "Then I know our people remain in the best of hands." As the Vulcan sky dwindled behind Norris's shuttle, he settled in mentally for the monumental trial ahead. The odds and challenges they faced were severe beyond measure, but he would willingly sacrifice anything required for the sake of Earth, for the sake of the Federation. He would not fail. Chapter 2. Captain's Log, Supplemental. The Draconians' reputation for brutality and genocide haunts me as we race to intercept their armada. Billions of innocent Federation lives now depend on my crew succeeding in this desperate mission. The burden weighs heavy, but we cannot yield. Too much is at stake. Norris stepped onto the dim bridge, the amber and crimson glow of control panels reflecting off the focused faces of his hand-picked crew, Lieutenant Vex making minute adjustments to the nav system, her brow furrowed in concentration, Dr. Revna analyzing sensor scans while absently twisting a lock of her curly hair, hulking Tellarite Ensign Gorak monitoring engine outputs with a rumbling grunt. They were the finest officers in the fleet. "Status report," Norris barked. First Officer T'Pring turned from his console, hands clasped behind his back. "Approaching the Typhon expanse, Captain. Long-range sensors detect no Draconian vessels yet." "Very well. yellow alert, and increased speed to warp factor 8. A deep thrumming reverberated through the deck plating as the ship's power core surged with raw energy, rocketing the Avalon faster through space. The streaking stars on the view screen became violently elongated, the ship's hull vibrating with the force of near-relativistic speed. Norris reviewed intelligence records on Draconian warships, spiked and serrated vessels with reptilian aesthetics, bristling with enough firepower and defenses to reduce a planet's surface to molten slag. He had only glimpsed flickers of their savage handiwork on disputed colony worlds before, but never directly engaged them in open warfare, until now. "Captain," called Vex, long-range sensors detecting multiple Draconian ships directly ahead. "Battle stations," Norris ordered, eyes narrowing. "Ready all phaser banks and torpedo bays, but take no action until fired upon. Hail them." The view screen flashed, showing the ridged, spike-adorned face of a Draconian commander. "Puny humans, you have trespassed into sovereign Draconian space," it hissed. "Surrender your vessel immediately, or be annihilated." The threat rolled from its lips like a promise as its slitted yellow eyes fixed on them malevolently. Norris stood firm, hands on hips. "We do not yield to aggressors. Reverse course now, or we will open fire." The alien bared jagged fangs, hate rippling across its scaly features. "Foolish creature, I will relish bathing in your spilled blood." The transmission cut abruptly. Norris felt the eyes of his resolute crew on him, ready to follow him into hell itself if needed. He would not let these merciless monsters reach Earth while his heart still beat. "Steady, crew," Norris said. "It seems the Draconians mean to force our hand either way, but we will stand fast." He retook his seat, jaw set, the ship rumbling beneath him. The coming battle would be desperate, but Norris silently vowed to seize any gambit, take any risk if it meant protecting the Federation from these nightmarish foes. The Avalon would not falter, not with Earth's hopes riding on them. Chapter 3. Captain's Log, Supplemental. Our fierce clash with the Draconian warship has left the Avalon grievously wounded. Over a dozen crew dead, the main deflector array destroyed. Such painful costs. Acrid smoke still hangs thick in the air as repair teams scramble desperately to restore critical systems. But we must press onward. Earth still depends on us stopping the armada before all is lost. Chuck surveyed the darkened bridge, now lit only by the eerie crimson glow of damaged consoles still erupting in showers of sparks that cast flickering shadows across the scarred bulkheads. The crushing grief hit him like a physical blow as the names of the fallen scrolled past on the flickering display screen. Good people lost in battle, their quarters now forever empty, their voices forever silenced. He took a deep, steadying breath, clenching his fists in sorrow and rising anger. The living still needed him focused and resolute. First Officer T'Pring approached, as stoic as ever but eyebrows knit with concern, a jagged green scrape visible on his otherwise ashen cheek. "Captain, without the main deflector array, warp drive is impossible. We must abort this increasingly reckless mission immediately before more crew are lost needlessly." Chuck rounded on him sharply. "Abandon Earth to the Draconians, number one? Turn our backs on billions of Federation citizens facing ruthless subjugation and slaughter? You know I can't do that. Our sworn duty remains unchanged, whatever the risks." T'Pring's jaw tightened, his dark eyes unrelenting. "The risks have grown beyond extreme, sir. Our current course verges on suicide." Chuck met his gaze unflinchingly. "I will spend every last crew member's life if that's what it takes to save Earth. Our duty is clear, Mr. T'Pring." T'Pring fell silent, his disapproval radiating from his stern gaze. But he gave a reluctant nod before turning back to his damaged console. the flickering readouts painting his face a shifting mosaic of red and black. Without warning, proximity alarms began to wail, pulses of crimson light staining the darkened bridge as the crew exchanged uneasy glances. Chuck's chest tightened. Had the Draconians returned to finish them off? He slammed a fist down hard on the arm of the command chair, anger and dread rising in tandem. Battered as they were, evasion would be nearly impossible. Evasive maneuvers, divert all remaining power to shields and weapon systems. Chuck barked the order, but in his heart he knew any defense against another Draconian attack would likely be futile at this point. The bridge groaned and heaved beneath them as the Avalon struggled to evade her attackers. Chuck watched the view screen helplessly as a spiked Draconian warship materialized out of the blackness off their bow, closing swiftly for the kill like some unstoppable underworld demon, her plasma chargers aglow. In those desperate moments, Chuck made his peace that this could be the ship's final stand, but not before they took a few more Draconians to the grave with them. Suddenly, just as hope seemed lost, the enemy warship's hull ruptured violently from a massive internal explosion, debris raining outward in a fiery plume. By some unexpected miracle against the odds, they had been saved from the jaws of destruction once more. But Chuck knew in his gut their reprieve would be short-lived at best. More Draconians would inevitably come, and the crippled Avalon could not take another pounding. They needed to take action swiftly and decisively if they were to have any fading hope of stopping the armada. Chapter 4. Captain's Log, Supplemental. Vital repairs still lag dangerously behind, even as the Draconian threat looms ever closer. I'm forced to consider a daring gamble, navigating the notoriously volatile Talos anomaly field. A treacherous shortcut, but with Earth's very future at stake, we may have no other option left. Chuck stared pensively out the ready room viewport as the wounded Avalon limped along at less than half warp capacity, her space frame groaning softly with the strain. He summoned his senior staff, steeling himself for the debate and concerns he knew the risky plan would provoke. But with Earth squarely in the Draconians' genocidal crosshairs, he had to risk it. As the officers filed in, Chuck saw grave concern etched on each face. Chief Engineer Brahms was the first to break the uneasy silence that hung over the briefing room. "Captain, I've tried absolutely everything, rerouted all available power, put every team on it around the clock. But full warp repairs will take at least 2 more weeks minimum," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. Chuck leaned forward intently, a fiery urgency in his eyes. "That's unacceptable. At that pace, we'd never intercept the Draconian armada before they reached the Sol system and Earth was lost." He hesitated, bracing himself before continuing. "Which is why I'm forced to attempt a highly risky shortcut, through the Talos anomaly field." First Officer T'Pring cocked a skeptical eyebrow, folding his arms across his chest. "Captain, navigating that notoriously volatile and unpredictable region would place enormous gravitational stress on the already severely compromised space frame. The ship may quite literally not hold together." Dr. Revna chimed in, her youthful face creased with concern. "I have to agree, Captain. Putting the crew through such lethal danger so soon after our losses—" Chuck held up a hand, cutting her off. He met T'Pring and Revna's gazes unflinchingly. "I'm well aware of the risks, but we have absolutely no alternative if we want even a sliver of hope of stopping the Draconian armada before they annihilate Earth and plunge the Federation into darkness forever." His tone made clear the decision was final. As the Avalon cautiously approached the first shimmering gravimetric anomaly on the view screen, a palpable apprehension gripped the bridge. For centuries, Spacefarers had spun harrowing tales of ships being torn apart molecule by molecule in these swirling cosmic maelstroms. But with Earth's future hanging by a thread, they had no choice but to brave the dangers. "Steady as she goes," Chuck said calmly as they entered the first swirling distortions. Immediately, violent gravimetric forces buffeted and slammed the ship relentlessly. Alarms wailed as emergency bulkheads sealed around blown-out hull breaches, fire-suppressant foam spewing from ceiling nozzles. Consoles erupted into showers of sparks as the deck pitched and bucked wildly, sending crew sprawling. Chuck white-knuckled the arms of his chair, willing the ship to hold together through sheer determination. For nearly 2 harrowing hours, they were mercilessly bombarded by fierce eddies and raging tidal forces as the anomalies wreaked havoc on the ship's strained structural integrity fields. But finally, miraculously, the Avalon emerged from the far side of the last swirling maelstrom, its space frame groaning and deforming under the enormous stress, key systems flickering on the brink. Chuck let out a ragged breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, wiping the sweat from his brow as he mentally took stock of the dire toll the passage had extracted from their weakened vessel. By some small grace, his gamble worked. The dangerous shortcut bought them precious time. But his fleeting relief evaporated when T'Pring reported grim sensor readings. The draconian armada had unexpectedly changed course, barreling now towards Solrudna 4, an inhabited system of 8 billion souls. Millions of innocent lives were suddenly in the crosshairs. Chuck desperately pushed the Avalon's battered engines to their shrieking limits, hoping against hope he could somehow still intercept the enemy fleet before it was too late. Chapter 5. Captain's Log, Supplemental. We drop out of warp into a scene from the deepest pits of hell, the draconian fleet swarming over Triangula Gamma 6 like a devouring plague of locusts, relentless torrents of fire and death raining down on her once glittering cities. Millions of innocent lives hang by the thinnest of threads as utter oblivion closes in. We must break the draconian stranglehold immediately, or all will be lost. The Avalon's view screen flickered to life, revealing a landscape of nightmarish chaos. Draconian warships encircled the planet like a pack of monstrous predators, blossoms of fire erupting in rapid succession across the surface as population centers were systematically reduced to molten slag. Chuck watched in wide-eyed horror, bile rising in his throat as seas of panicked civilians desperately fled the unrelenting annihilation in vain, the silent screams of the dying piercing his heart like daggers. This was no longer war. It was sadistic extermination on a planetary scale. "Battle stations!" Chuck shouted at the top of his lungs over the deafening din of blaring red alert klaxons, his pulse thundering like a drumbeat in his ears. "Target the command vessel and prepare a full phaser spread across her bow. We need to break their attack now before it's too late for these people." The heavily damaged Avalon surged forward with an almost suicidal burst of speed through the heart of the draconian formation, entering a hellish hailstorm of phaser and disruptor fire that buffeted the ship from all sides like flying through the photosphere of a raging star. The bridge erupted into sheer pandemonium as the Avalon reeled under the merciless bombardment, explosions ripping through the decks, consoles burst into flames like napalm, acrid smoke searing the lungs of Chuck's valiant crew who coughed violently but refused to abandon their posts even as the shrieking noise threatened to rupture their eardrums. "Initiate attack pattern Delta 5 now!" Chuck yelled hoarsely over the groaning protests of the Avalon's superstructure as she threatened to tear herself apart from the stresses of combat. Through the thick haze of smoke and flying sparks, the unmistakable, jagged, spike-riddled hull of the draconian flagship suddenly loomed dead ahead on the flickering view screen like the gaping maw of some underworld demon. "Ready tractor beams and lock on target on my mark," Chuck barked, making steely eye contact with T'Pring, seeing his own unflinching resolve reflected back. This was their moment to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, no matter the cost. "Mark, lock beams now!" Chuck roared. Every surviving system was diverted to the monumental effort as the Avalon's engine screamed in protest. Finally, against all odds, the ship succeeded in wrenching the hulking Draconian command ship violently off course. Immediately, the enemy formation devolved into chaos from the disruption. Sensing their chance to turn the tide, Chuck and his intrepid crew unleashed a withering barrage of targeted phaser strikes on the foundering Draconian vessels, fighting through their pain and exhaustion fueled on adrenaline and duty alone. Each desperate shot inched them closer to an improbable victory over the once seemingly unstoppable enemy. As the last Draconian ship limped away in retreat, the smoke began to clear on the ravaged Avalon Bridge, exposing flickering consoles still spewing sparks. As Chuck gripped his command chair, he realized they had done the impossible, snatched millions from the gaping jaws of oblivion when all seemed lost. When they returned home, battered and bloodied but unbowed, a hero's welcome awaited. But Chuck knew his crew would take only somber pride in their duty done this day. The specter of future battles loomed over the horizon, but for now, Earth was safe.